My daughter-in-law handed me the mug with both hands, smiling like she was presenting a gift at Christmas. "Here you go, Dad. I made it especially for you. My grandmother's recipe. Cinnamon honey tea. Good for the joints." She had never once called me Dad in 4 years of marriage. Not once. I looked down at the mug. Steam curled up from the surface. It smelled sweet. Maybe too sweet. I wrapped my fingers around the ceramic and said, "Thank you, sweetheart." And I set it on the end table beside my recliner. I did not drink it. I should back up. My name is Howard. I'm 67 years old. I spent 31 years as a licensed pharmacist in Dayton, Ohio. The kind of career that doesn't make you rich but makes you careful. You learn to read labels. You learn that things that smell pleasant aren't always safe. You learn that a smile from a stranger who wants something from you is different from a smile that costs nothing. My wife Patricia passed 8 years ago. Ovarian cancer. We had 29 years together, and I'll tell you honestly, I've never fully figured out how to fill the space she left. I kept the house in Beaver Creek. 3 bedrooms, a yard that was starting to get away from me, and a garage full of her gardening tools that I couldn't bring myself to sell. My son grew up in that house. His childhood is in the walls of that place. My son, I'll call him my son throughout this because that's what he was, what he still is biologically, though what he chose to become is something I'm still making peace with. He's 34, played baseball in high school, studied business management, graduated middle of his class. He met his wife at a company happy hour 4 years ago. She was a marketing coordinator at the same firm. I thought at first that she was charming, quick with a joke, the kind of person who knows how to make an impression in the first 10 minutes of a conversation and then reveals slowly over months that there isn't much underneath. She moved into my son's apartment. They got engaged fast, 6 months. Married within the year. I paid for a third of the wedding because my son asks me to and because Patricia would have wanted me to help. $12,000. I thought of it as a gift for him, not for the two of them. The first sign I missed at the reception, my daughter-in-law made a toast about building our future together as a family and looked directly at me when she said the word house. I missed it. I was grieving my wife's absence from that room, and I missed it. About 18 months into the marriage, my son called and asked if they could move in for a few months. He said they were trying to save money, that rent in Dayton had gotten steep, that they wanted to put a down payment on a place of their own. I said yes. I said yes because he's my son, because the house had too many empty rooms, because I thought it would be good to have company. They moved in on a Saturday in March. By the following Friday, my daughter-in-law had rearranged the living room furniture. She didn't ask. She just moved things. When I mentioned it, she said, "Oh, I hope that's okay. I just thought the flow was better this way." She smiled while she said it. My son was in the other room and said nothing. I told myself it wasn't worth an argument. I told myself a lot of things in those early months. The few months became 6, then 9, then a year. When I asked my son about their timeline for finding a place, he got quiet in a way I recognized. It was the quiet of someone who had already been told what to say and hadn't figured out how to say it yet. My daughter-in-law answered for him. "Dad, the market is just brutal right now. We're being smart about it." She touched my arm when she said Dad that time. It was the second time she'd used the word. Both times she wanted something. Around month 14, small things started going missing. First, it was $50 from the kitchen drawer where I kept cash for the grocery delivery. I thought I'd miscounted. Then $100 from my desk. I'm not careless with money. 30 years of filling prescriptions makes you precise. But I told myself I must be forgetting. Then my blood pressure medication started running out faster than it should have. I refill 90 days at a time. I track it. I had to refill after 63 days, and when I counted the remaining pills before calling the pharmacy, the numbers didn't add up. I didn't say anything. I went to my home office that night and I started keeping a notebook. Dates, amounts, anything that felt off. I wrote it all down in the same small handwriting I used to use for patient notes. Old habit. Saved my life, eventually. The evening of the mug, the cinnamon honey tea, was a Tuesday in October. My daughter-in-law had been unusually attentive that week. She offered to make dinner twice. She asked about my sleep. She told me I looked tired and suggested I see a doctor. My son echoed everything she said, half a beat behind her like a second instrument playing the same melody slightly off-tempo. That evening I was in my recliner watching the news when she came in with the mug. The exchange I described, that was real. Word for word as best I can remember. After she set it down and went back to the kitchen, I sat very still. I thought about the missing medication. I thought about the cash. I thought about my son's face, which had started to look like the face of someone carrying a weight he'd chosen to carry and didn't know how to put down. Then I thought about 31 years of pharmaceutical training. I picked up the mug. I brought it close to my face and inhaled slowly. Cinnamon, yes. Honey, yes. And underneath that, faint, almost hidden by the sweetness, something bitter, something chemical, not an herb, not a spice. I recognized it. I won't name the compound here, but it's something that in large doses causes cardiac arrhythmia. It's something that in an elderly man with existing blood pressure issues could cause a crisis that might read to an inattentive ER physician as natural. I set the mug back down. My hands were steady. I am a pharmacist. I have held myself together in worse moments than this one. I was at my wife's bedside for 11 days at the end. I know how to keep my face calm when everything inside it is not. I called out toward the kitchen. Smells wonderful, sweetheart. I'm going to let it cool a minute. Of course, she said, cheerful, unhurried. I waited until I heard the television turn on in their bedroom. Then I went to the kitchen, poured the tea slowly down the sink drain, rinsed the mug, and placed it back on the counter. I went to my office. I opened my notebook. I wrote down the date, the time, what had been offered to me, and what I had smelled. Then I sat quietly in the dark for a while because my son was down the hall, and I had to accept what that meant. The next morning, I drove to a pharmacy supply store 2 towns over and bought a home drug testing kit, the kind used by concerned parents, by social workers. Not subtle, but effective for a preliminary screen. I also stopped at the Dayton office of a woman named Cynthia, a family attorney I'd been referred to after Patricia's estate was settled. I told her I needed to speak with her privately. I told her I thought something was happening in my home, and I needed to understand my options. She looked at me for a long moment and said, "Howard, I'm going to need you to tell me everything." I told her everything. When I got home, I went through the cabinets under the bathroom sink, the one in the guest bathroom where my daughter-in-law kept her personal items. Behind a box of hair dye, I found a small glass bottle with no label. I used a clean plastic bag, a leftover from the pharmacy, to handle it. I wrote down the description. I brought it to Cynthia's office that afternoon. The following week, Cynthia had it tested through a contact she used for estate litigation cases, a private lab in Columbus. The results came back in 5 business days. The bottle contained a concentration of a cardiac glycoside compound, the same family of substances I had recognized in the tea. I read that report 3 times. I thought about my wife. I thought about what it would have looked like if I had finished that mug. A 67-year-old man with blood pressure history, found unresponsive in his recliner. A sad but not suspicious end. I thought about who would inherit the house. I had updated my will after Patricia died. My estate, the house, my retirement accounts, the modest savings, was split evenly between my son and a charitable fund Patricia and I had set up together for a children's literacy organization she volunteered with. My son knew about the will. He had been present when I reviewed it with the attorney. I thought about that. Then I went back to the notebook and I thought harder. I called my brother, who lives in Cincinnati. I didn't tell him everything, but I told him enough. I said I might need him to be available. He said, "Howard, whatever you need." My brother is the kind of man who means what he says. While I was building my case, quietly, carefully, my daughter-in-law made her second move. I found out later, through Cynthia, that she had forged my signature on a home equity line of credit application. The house in Beaver Creek is worth, according to the county auditor, approximately $310,000. She had applied for a $180,000 HELOC at a lender where she apparently had a contact, using a notarized document with a signature that was not mine. The application had not yet been approved when I discovered it, but it had been submitted. Had it gone through, $180,000 would have moved into an account I had no knowledge of. Cynthia connected me with a forensic document examiner who confirmed the signature was forged. The notary's license number on the document, it turned out, belonged to a notary whose license had lapsed. Someone had simply filled in a number. I sat with Cynthia in her office on a Wednesday afternoon, and she laid it all out on the conference table. The lab report, the document examiner's findings, my notebook, the pharmacy records showing irregular refill timelines on my blood pressure medication. "Howard," she said, "this is attempted murder, fraud, and elder financial abuse. That's federal involvement potentially, and definitely state criminal charges." I nodded. I asked her what we needed to do next. She said, "We contact the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. Today. I want to tell you what it felt like to walk back into that house that evening knowing what was in motion." My daughter-in-law was making pasta. She called out from the kitchen, "Dinner in 20, Dad." Third time she'd called me Dad. I counted. My son was on the couch. He looked up at me when I came in, and his face did something complicated. Guilt, relief, fear, I couldn't separate them. I looked at him for a moment longer than usual and said, "How was your day, son?" He said, "Fine." I said, "Good," and I went to my room and I closed the door, and I sat on the edge of the bed that Patricia and I had shared for 26 years, and I allowed myself 5 minutes to fall apart. 5 minutes. Then I washed my face, went out, and ate dinner. The investigators came on a Friday early before my son left for work. I want to be honest with you. I did not feel triumphant when they came. I felt hollowed out. There is no version of this story where I win. My son was in his pajamas when 2 officers knocked on the door. My daughter-in-law saw their badges and went white in a way that confirmed everything I'd already known. She was taken in for questioning. They searched the house with my permission. They found the remaining contents of a second bottle in her makeup bag, same compound. They found communication on her phone, text messages to my son detailing the HELOC plan. Some of the messages were about timing. Some were about what the house would sell for. My son was not arrested that morning, but he was questioned, separately for a long time. He called me from a coffee shop 3 hours later. His voice was broken in a way I hadn't heard since he was 14 and his dog died. "Dad," he said. "Dad," I said. "Don't. Not yet." He said, "I didn't know about the tea." I sat with that for a long time before I answered. Maybe it was true. Maybe he had agreed to the financial piece, told himself it was just paperwork, told himself he wasn't hurting anyone. Maybe he drew a line at the other thing and she crossed it without him. Maybe, I said, I believe you that you didn't know about the tea, but you knew about the other thing. He didn't deny it. My daughter-in-law was charged with attempted poisoning, elder financial abuse, and forgery. In Ohio, those charges stacked in a way that gave the prosecutor a lot to work with. She was denied bail initially given the nature of the charges and the premeditation the evidence suggested. At trial, the lab report and the document examiner's findings were central. Her attorney tried to argue the bottle was herbal supplement, but the lab analysis was unambiguous. She was convicted on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 16 years. The forgery charge added time because of the elder abuse classification. Ohio has enhanced sentencing provisions for financial crimes against victims over 65. Cynthia told me afterward that it was one of the heavier sentences she'd seen for this combination of charges in this county, and that the premeditation shown in the text messages made the difference. My son cooperated with investigators regarding the HELOC scheme. He was charged with 1 count of financial fraud, accepted a plea agreement, and received 36 months probation with restitution requirements. He lost his job. He moved into a studio apartment in Kettering. He calls me every Sunday. I answer about half the time. Some Sundays I'm not ready. Some Sundays I pick up. I had the locks changed the same week they moved out. I also had a security system installed, something I should have done years ago. My brother came up from Cincinnati and stayed for 2 weeks, and having him in the house helped more than I expected. We ate breakfast together every morning and didn't always talk about it, and that was the right way to handle it. I updated my will again with Cynthia. The charitable fund now receives a larger share. I have no hostility in making that decision. I simply looked at what I had built over 67 years and decided carefully where it should go. Physically, I am fine. The medication irregularities have resolved now that I manage them entirely myself. My blood pressure is well controlled. I sleep better than I did when they were in the house, which surprised me at first and then made complete sense. People ask me sometimes, friends, my brother, even Cynthia once, how I stayed so calm through all of it. How I sat at that dinner table night after night, ate the food she put in front of me, said goodnight, and then went and wrote in my notebook. I tell them it was the training. 31 years of not letting your face give away that you've just caught a serious medication error, of keeping your voice steady when a patient is frightened, of holding the information carefully until you know exactly what to do with it. But if I'm honest, and I'm trying to be honest throughout this, it was also Patricia. After she died, I thought about her every single day. I thought about how hard she fought and how clearly she faced what was coming and how she never once, in those 11 days at the end, wasted the time she had on bitterness. She was present. She was intentional. Even at the end. I thought about that when I poured the tea down the sink. I thought, I am not going to let this be how my story ends. Not in my own recliner, in my own house, in the home where my son grew up and where Patricia's gardening tools are still in the garage. Not like that. The gardening tools are still there. I haven't touched them, but this spring, I've been thinking about the back flower bed. It ran along the fence line when Patricia was alive. Full of things I can't name. Colors I remember but couldn't tell you the varieties of. It's been overgrown for 8 years. I think I might do something about that. I don't know exactly what yet. I'll figure it out. I've got time. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since all of this happened. Not in any grand philosophical way. Just the plain, ordinary kind of thinking you do when you're 67 and you've had a lot of quiet evenings to sit with something. What my daughter-in-law set in motion didn't begin the night she handed me that mug. It began long before that in 100 smaller choices she made when she decided that patience was too slow and honesty was too inconvenient. Every lie has a first one. Every scheme has a moment where a person could have turned around and didn't. She didn't turn around. And the further she walked down that road, the more she had to keep walking. Because stopping would have meant facing what she'd already done. That's not fate. That's not the universe punishing her. That's just how it works. You build something from dishonesty and eventually the whole structure comes down and it comes down on you. I think about my son in that too. He didn't pour anything into anyone's mug, but he sat across from me at dinner and said nothing, and there is a cost to that kind of silence. 36 months of probation and a lost job and a studio apartment in Kettering, that's not a punishment handed down from somewhere above. That's the direct consequence of knowing something was wrong and choosing not to be the kind of man who says so. He's 34. He has time to become that man. I genuinely hope he does. What I keep coming back to, though, what I think about most, is the notebook. 31 years behind a pharmacy counter taught me that the most dangerous thing you can do in a crisis is panic, and the most useful thing you can do is write it down. Observe. Record. Don't act until you understand what you're looking at. People sometimes hear that and think it sounds cold. It isn't. It's the opposite of cold. It's how you protect what matters when everything around you is telling you to just react. I was scared every single day I was keeping that notebook. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't calm because I didn't feel it. I was calm because I decided that fear was information, not instruction. It told me something was wrong. It didn't get to tell me what to do next. That was my job. Patricia used to say that intelligence without character is just cleverness, and cleverness without courage is just cleverness that doesn't go anywhere. She said it about other people, usually, but I've been applying it to myself these past months. I knew something. I had the train to recognize it. But knowing and recognizing don't mean anything if you don't act carefully, methodically, without letting anger make the decisions for you. That's what I'd want anyone to take from this, if anything. Not that I'm particularly brave or particularly smart. just at the combination of paying attention, telling the truth, and refusing to give up on your own life. Those three things together are more powerful than almost anything someone can aim at you. I'm still here. The house is still mine. The back flower bed is still overgrown, but spring is coming,